Test Geek Exam Prep. I want to welcome you to our Series 7 Top-Off exam. Pretty excited about the new exam that FINRA has created, of course. And let's talk a little bit about the specifics of the exam itself. Some of the statistics, might you say. Of course, it has 125 questions. Now, don't be surprised. You will actually answer 135 questions. FINRA always loves to put experimental or beta questions in with their exams. You probably have saw some of those. There's 10 extra in the SIE exam as well. So these are just experimental questions. You don't know which ones they are. They are randomly dispersed throughout the exam. You are not graded for nor against these 10 additional questions. You're only graded on the 125. Now, of the 125 questions, you must answer any 90 questions correctly. And it doesn't matter which 90 it is. Any 90 will do. Okay? The passing score, of course, is 72%, 90 out of 125. You have 3 hours and 45 minutes to complete the exam. Wow, that's a lot of time for 135 questions. Time generally is not a factor. It shouldn't be, anyway. Okay? If it's taking you that long, then we're probably overthinking, overanalyzing these questions a little too much. Okay? But generally speaking, that should be more than enough time. On average, it probably takes anywhere from about 2 to 2.5 hours for most people. That's average. Some people are actually quicker than that. Some are a little slower than that, of course, okay? But the average is somewhere between 2 and 2.5 hours, okay? Now, what are they going to be testing us on? Well, product, and more product, okay? There are 91 questions on products and product suitability. These have been a theme for the tests, even the old Legacy Series 7, Legacy Series 6, even the old exams, have always been heavy on product and product suitability. Okay? Yes, you're going to have to make some recommendations. Now notice, 91 questions out of the 125. That's the big part right there. Okay? There's also some ancillary rules and regs. You'll actually see a little overlap, a little, from the SIE to the Series 7. Not a whole lot, but there is some. Okay? Now, the videos you're about to watch were filmed some time ago. Okay? Because again, for stocks, bonds, options, margins, that stuff never changes. So you might actually see in the video course I referring to certain lesson numbers or module numbers, which really don't kind of sync up with how it's presented on this particular course. But that's okay. As long as you follow our downloadable content outline, you should have no problem with it. Just ignore the lesson numbers and module numbers that you see on the video. The content, I assure you, is still the same, right? An option's an option, a stock's a stock, a bond's a bond. That stuff never changes, okay? Now, also, I like to start off each course with how best to study and pass your FINRA exam, okay? So, I think there is a recipe for success, a path of least resistance, if you were. Okay? So, how to pass your FINRA exam. Now, I would imagine that you all have a textbook of some sort, whether it be one of the major publishers, Kaplan, STC, Past Perfect, Training Consultants, Test Teachers, ExamFX. Those are the biggest of the textbook publishers out there, right? Of course, when I first got hired, a long time ago, the boss says, "Welcome to the team. Here, read this," and shoves over to me a 700-page Series 7 textbook. My goodness. And that, at that time, was all there was. It was pre-internet days. So that should tell you how long ago it was. But that's all I had. I read the textbook from cover to cover 3 times. Okay? I mean, I had nothing else. Now, you got a 700-page textbook. How much of that are you going to retain, right, in 700 pages? So I actually read through it a second time, and a third time, cover to cover. Third time through, of course, I actually wrote notes on each of the units, the sections, and I swear to this day, that's the only thing that got me past that exam back then, was actually writing those notes. For me, if I write it, I tend to remember it better. Okay? Now, of course, you have all sorts of tools at your disposal, one of which, of course, is a video course that you can take at your leisure, right? Now, so instead of going through that textbook cover to cover, because, you know, there's no way you're going to be able to retain much of that, probably no more than 20% maybe, if you're lucky, okay? And, you know, those textbooks tend to do an overkill. I'll bet you there's 20 to 40% of the material in that textbook you'll never see on the test, okay? And that was the problem. Of course, now when we're sitting there studying this stuff, you know, who knows what material is going to be tested, what isn't. Well, that's what the video course is hopefully going to do for you. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. However, we still got to get through this material, okay? But instead of cover to cover, take it unit by unit, okay? Unit or chapter 1, whatever you want to call it, right? You want to read through it. A lot of the manufacturers also create videos for each one of these chapters. I don't know about some of those. They seem to have guys sitting at a desk reading PowerPoint slides. So, but sometimes people like to actually hear it spoken to them. You know, they're audio learners, and that's okay. So whatever, you know, floats your boat, whatever is best for you. But make sure you get through that material. Right now, on the practice questions, you can customize. I know the largest manufacturers or publishers, Kaplan and STC, allow you to customize your exams. So you just want to do questions on Unit 1 itself, okay? Let's say 20 questions. That's it. Then, of course, you go through Unit 2. Read and or watch the video if you like, right? And then do 20 questions on the practice questions. Then, I would suggest 25 questions on Units 1 and 2 cumulatively. So as you build, you continue to reinforce what you've read prior, okay? Again, because of the amount of content. And then, of course, you just start with Unit 3, read, video, okay? And then 20 questions on Unit 3. And then perhaps, say, 30 questions cumulatively on Units 1 through 3. So again, you're building and reinforcing, building and reinforcing, and you get through all of this content in a systematic way in which you build and reinforce as you go. Because again, some of these textbooks are so large, right? By the time you got to like Unit 12, it's been 3 weeks since you've seen Unit 1, right? So that's why you want to continually build those cumulative exams. And you just continue all the way through Unit 4, read, watch videos, 20 questions. So now notice, we're only doing 20 on that to reinforce that. But then, of course, you reinforce when you do your cumulative. So you add more questions to it anyway. Okay? So you just build and build and build and build and build. And of course, you create kind of a knowledge pyramid where you start off narrow and then you slowly expand out and reinforce as you go. That, in my opinion, is the best way to obtain and retain this large quantity of information. Okay? Now, next step. That's where we come in. Okay? Once you've been through this material, now what we want to do is to concentrate, to focus on the most testable material. Okay? Also, you know, draw out some of this stuff. What does this stuff look like? Give it some context. How is the test going to ask these particular concepts? What will the test questions look like? How do I answer them? Okay? So, that's when you want to take a class, either live or video. Now, I think my video classes are as close to a live class as you could possibly get. Because notice, what am I doing? Talking directly to you, on the board, we're illustrating all of this out. Guess what? You can easily see the pyramid structure of that. You know, so this is as close to a live class as you're possibly going to get. Okay? Now, What we're going to do, of course, is to simply talk about, as I just mentioned, what's on the test, how it most likely shows up on the test, and how you should answer it on the test. Okay? That's it. How does this stuff apply to what you're actually going to do in your real job? Well, I got two answers to that. Don't know, I don't care. Okay? Because that's not my role. My role is to get you a P, right? A pass. Get at least 90 of these correctly and get this thing out of your life so you can start your job, right? So, we are going to concentrate solely on the test work. Now, again, there's a path of least resistance if you choose to take it, right? And here's where that path begins. Keep it simple. The more you think, the more you sink. Paralysis by analysis. You have to understand multiple choice, standardized exams have a set structure to them. It's a linear structure, kind of like 2 plus 2 equals 4, right? So you find the variables in the test question, and of course you're looking for the answer. Now, I just wish it were that simple, because oftentimes our critical variables are surrounded by superfluous, distracting material. Really, the only thing that's important is the 2 plus 2. Then, you look at the answer choices. Well, one answer choice says 4. Yay, right? But then, of course, it goes on. It says, except in months that end in R that have 2 full moons. Or some other rational-based answer response. Sounds good, doesn't it? One answer choice will say 32. One answer choice will say 61. One answer choice would say square root of 16. See? So you notice there's typically 2 answer choices that you can most easily eliminate from your choice. But then it always gets down to 2. And boy, those 2 can get pretty close. Okay? Your brain is latching upon the one that's most familiar to you, and with a qualifying rationale that kind of sounds good to your rational brain, right? This one doesn't necessarily look as familiar to your brain, but of course, 2 plus 2 is 4, which of course is the square root of 16. So you see, that's why it is imperative that you keep it simple, right? If you start getting caught up in all of this other mess, right, some of these other answer choices are going to sound even better to you. Got to keep it simple. 2 plus 2 is always equal to 4. There are no qualifications to that. Okay? Stay with what you know. You take the test. Don't let the test start taking you. Okay? It's easier said than done. But I tell everybody, knowing how to take these standardized exams can easily be the difference between a 68% and a 78%. In other words, a P and not a P. Okay? So we got to practice our test taking a little bit. It is crucial. These are very standardized, structured, multiple choice exams. And of course, you probably saw this same thing on the SIE, and you'll see it on any other exams that you'll have to take as well. You start seeing the structure, right? And that's going to make it a lot easier for you. Okay? So, keep it simple. Now, once you've completed the class, what you want to do, of course, is then simulate the test-taking environment. The best the law allows. These exams are copyrighted material. Okay? No one's allowed to duplicate the test questions. None of the textbook manufacturers are going to have questions that are verbatim to the test. You're going to see there's a difference between what the publishers and even what TestGeek writes as a practice question than the real questions. Okay? There's a gap between those. There's a difference. But you know what? I don't care. Because a stock's a stock, a bond's a bond, and option's an option. So if you stay with what you know, okay, I don't care how it's written. Okay? So you want to simulate that test-taking environment the best the law allows. So you want to work on some practice finals. Now, typically, the publishers are pretty close, as well as TestGeek, is with what concepts are being tested. So your test scores typically will generally score within about 5% of what you score on the real test. Okay? That's a pretty good benchmark for you. About plus or minus 5%. You're usually within that range. Okay? Now, the Series 7 Top-Off exam, as you know, is a fairly new exam. Okay? There might be some variations of that in the beginning. Okay? But generally, again, stocks are stocks, bonds are bonds, options are options. That stuff never changes. Okay? So, you want to take these practice finals, 125 questions, it'll score it for you, and these major publishers, what's nice about it is that you have a performance tracker of some sort where they'll then take that score and break it down into the different components. So you can actually find where your weak areas are, right? There might be, well, options are at 48%. Well, that's obviously a weakness, okay? Or municipal bonds, or corporate bonds, or limited partnerships, or whatever it may be, okay? So you can go back into the textbook and or the practice questions, right? Or go back into the video class, kind of revisit those sections, and then do it again. Right? Simulate the test-taking environment, the best the law allows, take it, it'll score it for you, and then of course break down that score and find your weak areas. That is the best way to prepare for this. Okay? Now again, I want to make sure everybody understands. This is the path of least resistance. That doesn't mean it's not a lot of work. It is. I'm not going to try to fool you there. You've got to do the time. Okay? And you don't want to do this over like 6 months. Right? Most of the publishers, of course, have those electronic calendars where you can type in a hypothetical test date and it will then pre-populate all the preceding days with what you should be doing. You should be working on this stuff every single day. It's got to become part of your life in order to pass this thing the first time. Okay? And that's our goal. All right? So go through those practice finals. I like to see at least 3 of them. That way it gives you a pretty good average to kind of tell you where you are in this process. Okay? But once you get through those 3, you find your weak areas. Also, please don't hesitate. All right? I love hearing from folks all over the country. Brian at testgeekexamprep.com. Don't hesitate, man. Use me as a resource. I've taken this test. I've actually taken it a couple of times because I've been in and out of the industry a couple of times. So I had to retake all my licenses. So please, feel free if you want to give me a buzz. I'd be more than happy to. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. See you soon.